romance, really. Um,
Yeah.
so the first movie I want to take a look at is Autumn Marathon. And it should be a little bit familiar to us because the lead actor in that movie was also in the last movie we reviewed was Office Romance, right?
Right, right.
So I want to ask you, like, how well known is Autumn Marathon in the Russian speaking world? Like, is it as well known as Office Romance, or is it more of like kind of have to be on the in crowd to know about it?
It is a classic. People definitely know about it. It is a very popular film. It's not as quiet as celebrated as The Office Romance because that's more of a comedy, and I say it's more digestible and you laugh at it. This one, Auto Marathon, I think it's a little quirky and it kind of tackles deeper themes, but it is a very popular film. It's populated with a lot of A-list actors in it. I mean, Oleg Basilashvili, who's in it, he's like a movie star. He was like a movie star. So it is a popular movie, well known, definitely. And the director is also a very well-known director.
Yeah, and I was going to say because I looked at the cast, the big one that stands out to me was Maria. I might butcher this, but Marina Nayalova. She's a pretty well known actress in Russia, the former Soviet Union, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And I have to mention that all of these actors, they come from theatrical background. So
Yes, yeah.
they have that training. I think there's a similarity with British actors as well. They most of them kind of come from theater and theater school. So yeah, definitely she was a very well-known actor.
Yeah, and I was gonna say too, because when you watch the movie, it's like they just play these roles to perfection because Andre and I gotta say, Andre for me, he's probably the most tragic and sympathetic and yet dislikable character all at once because this is someone who kind of just allows himself to be beaten up by the world and he doesn't do anything. He's just it seems like he's just happy to be alive, really. Um, what do you make of Andre? Because he's this guy who's a translator. He works with Bill, who's from Denmark, and Bill kind of just, I don't know. I kind of get the feeling that Bill, he really doesn't know what he's doing. He's just there. But then, but you see, like the real conflict isn't between Andre and his wife, but it's Andre and Allah or Alia.
Yeah.
Because Ali is very much concerned about, hey, when are you actually going to be serious about this? Because she keeps bringing it over and over again. When are we going to have the kids together?
Oh yeah.
And Andre's like,
Yeah.
what?
Right.
Андрюша, а твоя дочка на кого похожа? На тебя или на...
Yeah, he's kind of like a guy that doesn't have will of power. He's like a yes man, and he's pulled in all of his directions. He cannot say no to everyone. And I don't think Bill works with him officially. I think I maybe I missed it. I'm not sure, but I feel like he just helps him because he cannot say no to anyone.
That's what I was wondering too, because I'm like, because it's like everybody else, like in the publishing world in Leningrad, knows about Andre and his work, but Bill, he just seems to exist, in the periphery. Like it's almost like he sort of exists in Andre's mind in a way.
Нина прекрасная кулинарка.
Не напрягайся, дорогой.
Простите, очень тихо, плохо понимаю.
А это я ему.
Это на мне.
Right.
It's like the only people who see him are his wife, Andre, and Vasily, who, for some weird reason, just wants to take him to go mushroom hunting.
I get drunk.
but I want to focus a little bit on the relationship between Andre and Allah because I think those two have the most chemistry in the movie because both of them, if and this is just me speaking here, you kind of get the feeling that both of them are beaten down, really, because Andre, we know he's a yes man, and yes men typically they're just gonna be agreeable to everything, and they don't win anything at the end. Alla, I feel like she kind of has to put herself in a similar position in order to appease Andre, but Andre doesn't really know what he wants. So you remember that scene where Alla just like confronts Andre in the street, and then she like walks off, and Andre chases her, and he nearly gets hit by that van.
Мне что, в тюрьму садиться, что ли? Виноват.
Андрей! Что он с тобой сделал? Мама.
Right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like Alla knows what she wants to do, but then she kind of caves in at the last minute, and this happens frequently throughout the movie, especially as you get near the end, where Alla's like, please return your key to me. You're no longer welcome at my place. And Andre thinks he's free, but then he gets a phone call from Alla, and she's like, "Hey, are you still there? I've decided maybe I'm not going to be serious about this marriage I'm threatening you with to this other guy." So what do you think about the dynamic between those two characters?
There is it is a very interesting dynamic. It's almost like she plays the adult, and that the scene that you brought up where he's hit by a van and she comes to his defense, like he physically starts fighting with the driver. So she I feel like she's the adult, and I think she has that innate need in her to take care of someone. She doesn't have children. She keeps talking about having a baby with him, but she doesn't have any. But
Yeah.
I think she has that innate need to take care of someone. And here's this guy who's very weak. He's very talented. He's very well known in his industry, and he's very much revered. But he's helpless. So I think that's the dynamic between them, that she can't let go of that need, and he's the perfect object of that need. He needs to be taken care of.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you really think she loves him, or is it more of just like an affection for him? Because I wasn't too entirely sure if she really did, have the same romantic feelings, that he would have for her. Because to your point, it sounds like she's more maternal. Because you remember when he comes to visit her, she's like, "Oh yeah, that one button near your chest, is using the wrong thread color. Let me go and fix
Right.
that. Oh, and by the way, I knew you'd be hungry, so I made you some dinner."
Right. I feel like there's a lot of people like that. For them, they can't separate. So if I feel the need to take care of you, and you look like someone that needs to be taken care of, that's how I love you. That's how I understood it. Because rewatching this film for like 10th time to prepare for this call, I couldn't understand why she fell in love with it. Okay, look, I get it, he's talented, but he's not necessarily romantic. He's not
He's not Rock Hudson, in other words.
right, exactly. Right, exactly. And he's super weak, and he lies constantly. He can't stop. He can't tell the truth, and yeah. So I think it's in my opinion, that's the need to take care of him that kind of gives her that love for him.
That's the
Yeah.
only thing that would make sense, really.
Right. Yeah.
I also have to say that Nina, you would think that Nina kind of would play more of a role in the movie, but she's in the background too. But when she does make her appearance, like you feel for her, because here's a woman who has to put up with a lot of his nonsense. She knows he's having an affair, and she's also kind of well versed in his lies, because I think his favorite one is he's in the drunk tank or something, or he spent a night in the intoxication center, right?
Right. Yeah.
And there's this one poignant moment where they're having a conversation. She just breaks down and says, "Nobody needs me."
Как это страшно, когда никому не нужна.
Неправда, Нина, ты мне нужна. Ты Леночке нужна.
Нет.
Ты всем нужна. Ты на работе нужна.
And a part of me feels like, yeah, that's true. No, nobody really needs you. You don't do anything.
Right. Yeah, that line stood out to me. I kind of like paused it. I'm like, it just felt a little. But then I remembered it's 1979.
Yeah.
It was people. We as humanity were much more sentimental then, I think. But yeah, it's she kind of says to him what's been kind of boiling up in her, that her daughter left. She doesn't need them anymore. She's an adult. She doesn't want her curtains, doesn't want her opinions, and is the only person in her life also doesn't need her.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a brilliant actress, by the way, Natalia Gundareva. She's also like the character actress, and she had a lot of lead roles and big movies back then. Very subtle here, I feel, in most moments, where she catches him lying again over and over again. I just watched her and I couldn't look away from her because she has this subtle reactions to catching another of his lies and how she
Yes.
reacts to it.
Yep.
Yeah, sometimes she gets aggressive about it and passive aggressive about it, but sometimes she doesn't say anything, but she does react. And on the bus, she starts crying because she realized, well, this guy is never going to change. He
Mhm.
just keeps lying. Yeah, and you're right. The role is surprisingly smaller than what you'd expect from a wife of a lead character to be. Um, but yeah, she's great in it. She's brilliant.
Well, to your point, and you make an excellent point, is the fact that here's this woman who spent most of her life taking care of her family, her husband and her daughter, and now that her daughter's gone off to, I think they're going off to the Arctic Circle with her husband,
Yeah.
and then her husband is having an affair with the younger woman. She really does feel like nobody needs her. So
Right.
I kind of feel like Nina and Alla are kind of like the same woman, right? Except
Mhm.
except Andre kind of makes his choice. I'm just going to go ahead and go with the younger, prettier model. When maybe he has the realization, maybe he doesn't, that he's basically running to going to his wife. Really, the person
Right.
the person he should have been turning to was his wife, because I'm sure because she pretty much does the same thing, but it's like
Yeah.
for whatever reason he goes to Allah, who I don't know. I guess I guess kind of has a bit more. She's a bit perkier, really.
Hmm. Right.
Whereas Nina's a bit more saddened and downtrodden.
Right.
Um, no, no, I will say like the way that this movie is labeled, it's labeled as a tragic comedy.
Hmm.
Now I can sort of see the tragedy in it, but the comedy part took a little while for me to understand.
Hmm.
Um, how did you make sense of all of that?
Yeah, yeah. Maybe it's a specifically Russian Soviet thing, and subtitles. Maybe some things get lost in translation. Those
Yeah.
whole sequences with the neighbor coming in, by the way, played by a brilliant comedic actor who was also like an A-list actor. He comes in, the neighbor, and all he wants to do is get drunk and get everyone else around him drunk. Because he's basically an alcoholic at this point.
Yeah.
But and in Russia they don't they don't use that word. Um, so I think those if you speak Russian and you understand the culture, those scenes are comedic. Here we are, we're following this guy who's basically is pulled in all directions, and he's very frustrating to watch. Like, he can't make up his mind, and he's struggling, right? It's
Mhm.
not easy for him. And here's this neighbor who comes in and just disrupts their day and makes them drink and makes them go mushroom hunting, and he keeps pressuring him. So that's where the comedy comes in. Also, another moment I would bring up is when they're arguing on the bus, their last fight with his wife,
Yeah.
and she stops the bus. She wants to get off in the middle of highway somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Stop the bus. She has to get out, and he follows her. And at the moment she thinks maybe there's a chance, but he gives her one last lie, and then she slaps him. She walks away, catches the cab, and leaves. He goes on the side of the road, and there's a box, and he kicks it. He kicks the box, but there's a brick inside the box, which is like a tricks that kids do. Like,
Yeah.
there's a box, and your instinct is to kick it for some reason, but there's a brick inside, and he hurts himself. So that's kind of like having a biggest fight of the movie, but then him falling into this trick and hurting himself. So that's like a combination of the tragic moment and a comedic moment. which I
So
think this director, by the way, it does really, really well.
yeah.
Yeah, in other
So
films as well.
so that leads me to another question, because the last movies we reviewed, I could sort of understand where they're coming from, because the girls and Officer Romance, you can sort of understand where the comedy is. Um,
Hmm.
can you explain what exactly would I guess constitute would be, I guess would be the right word. What would constitute as Soviet humor? What would be considered
Hmm.
humorous that that people in Soviet countries would would find funny, that would probably not be as easily translatable here in the West?
Oh, interesting. Good question. So, you know, we Hollywood had Charlie Chaplin, right?
Mhm.
That's like, if anyone says what's the ultimate comedy comedic performance or comedy film, I'm sure a lot of people would say, Charlie Chaplin, because it's physical comedy. I mean, it's funny, it's hilarious, and he does all these dangerous things, but they're
Mhm.
super funny because he's performing them, and it teeters on the edge of danger, like falling into whatever somewhere, but then anyways. So I think for Russian and Soviet, it's very much seeped into the tragedy of life for some reason. I don't know. Very, but, yeah, the Russian storytelling in general, and we'll talk about other two films as well,
Yeah.
is seeped in a lot of like deep thinking. They get drunk and they sit around the table and they talk about deep stuff. So I think the comedy is rooted in that for some reason to me. Later on, we had like physical comedy stuff coming in later, like in the 80s, 90s.
Yeah.
But I think early on it was that way. In this particular film, besides the kicking the box and there's a brick moment, um, when this neighbor comes in and he's kind of pulls them into his world. Okay, let's get drunk, and the Danish guy, the only foreigner in the film, who's like super harmless, ends up in the dry out whatever office,
Yeah.
whatever they call it, which is in its way is very much quintessentially Russian, quintessentially Soviet.
Mhm.
Basically, if you're drinking and if they catch you drunk on the street and you can't function, can't walk, the police will take you in and you'll basically sober up in that place somewhere.
Right. It's like a drunk tank here. Right.
Yeah. So that's funny. But maybe like I was saying, you have to speak the language and you have to be born and be raised there to react to it in a comedic way, because it's a tragedy. Someone is so drunk, has to end up in that place. It's not necessarily funny, but because it's a common occurrence in the culture. Oh, that is funny.
Right, and the fact that that it happens to a Danish guy like Bill, someone who
Yeah,
someone who otherwise says he doesn't drink, and he goes on these morning runs, and he's very dedicated to his work. It kind of just shows anybody can get pulled down to that level. You don't have to be just Russian, right?
yeah. When you go to Russia, there's always going to be someone who's going to make you drink.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, because as you were saying that, it made me think. So is the humor derived from the fact that people are looking at, the tragedy of common life, having to put up with, the daily activities, and being, broken down by people constantly lording it over you, and just sort of like, just like exaggerating it, because
Yeah,
I feel like with Andre, I feel like a lot of the stuff that he does, would be pretty common, during that time period. But it also feels a little bit. There's a part of it that you feel like, okay, I don't think that would really happen that much, like being kicked off a bus, or kicking a brick, or having, or in his case, like he keeps running back and forth to like these different places. Like he keeps running
yeah,
to the publishers, but then he runs back to Allah's, but then he's got to run back to his place, but then he runs back to the university, and he runs back to Allah's place. I feel like
Yeah.
that wouldn't really happen as often, really, right?
Right. And also, what about that scene where where he's picked up by a truck that washes the pavement to take him somewhere?
That part I did not understand. I'm like, that cannot be a thing. People people
It's,
don't stop a washing truck and get in.
to me, that's the genius of the director Georgi Danelia, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing. I always thought that it's not the first time that this is happening, and he knows the guy who's driving the truck.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And the whole running back and forth, as we were saying, that's the marathon, you know. And then
Mhm.
yes, obviously we do see him running with Bill regularly once a week or whatnot. But the real marathon is his whole life is running
Yeah.
back and forth. Yeah,
Well, what
right.
about that? Well, to go back to that scene where he gets hit by the van, what I thought was interesting was like this one guy comes out and he grabs Andre and like bends him over, but then it's like, oh wait, it's
Yeah,
this driver, so he grabs him and bends him over. I'm like, is he a cop, or is that just a citizen's arrest, or what is that? Or is
yeah.
that part of the comedy too?
The absurdity and the comedy, but it also is rooted in reality that at that time people would step in, they would not just walk by.
All right.
And Leningrad, which is now known as St. Petersburg, is a big city. So, and big cities, people have seen everything and they'll just walk by. But
Hmm.
then people were very much invested in what's happening around them, and they would step in. And so
Right.
this little guy, steps in and basically takes control of both of them. But that's the absurdity. I think that's the absurdity, and that's kind of an example of what that Soviet Russian humor would be. That's just like out of nowhere.
Yeah. And when you watch the movie, it's kind of like a theater of the absurd, really, because
Yeah.
it's not based on anything exaggerated or anything, or it doesn't even make you feel good at the end. It just leads to frustration, because we see, like, at the end he answers Allah's call, and then Nina comes back, and then and then you see he's doing the little running routine with Bill. You come to realize he's not going to change. Like he said, he just wants to live that life, and he seems pretty content with it, if it's a bit even if it's a bit weird,
Mm.
so I'm wondering if the comedy is just led to the fact that it's not about feeling good, it's just about expressing frustration and humor at a man who just refuses to change.
Yeah, definitely. You're definitely right. I agree with you. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And on some level, it's also balancing out the main storyline.
Yeah.
You need a little bit of humor there to kind of keep people watching, maybe. Yeah.
And I was going to say too, because I said it last time, but I think it offers a wonderful slice of life view into Russia in the late 70s, because it's
Yeah.
just because you get to see the city environment in Leningrad, but you also get to see the countryside, and I thought that scene in the forest was funny, because apparently they walked all the way over there. They didn't drive or anything. Like, they were just
So,
walking around. I'm like, how close is the forest that they're able to get there?
I know, yeah. And that's that guy who came in and basically disrupted their day. They were working on something, and he just, he just made them do all these things.
Yeah.
And yeah. One thing I
No,
want to, yeah.
no, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to bring up, there is closer to the end, there is a moment where he cracks, right? All these things start happening. The
Yep.
boss is telling him that he's late. Then the boss is telling him that he was taking off of his passion project that was about to come up, and the project was given to his talentless friend who he was
Yeah.
helping.
Yeah. Varvara. Yeah.
Right. And then the wife decided to leave. The mistress told him no. The daughter left to Arctic, sorry. And then he's alone in his house and he's trying to move the furniture. And you think, okay, maybe that's a new beginning. But as you were saying, the mistress called and he picked up the phone and the wife came back and we're back to normal. And that's also like nothing changed. There's a moment we believe that it could change, but nothing changed. Same guy.
I also feel like, when it comes to his work, because he works as a translator, I kind of get the feeling he never gets anything done. It's because he allows all these things to kind of distract him, right?
Absolutely.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but did you get the sense that he's constantly working on the same thing over and over again, but he never gets it done at all?
He never gets it done, yeah, because he's a yes man. He can't say no to anyone, and he agrees to everything that people ask him to do, and he's basically like a doormat that people are, and he wants to please everyone, and therefore he hurts everyone and himself.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, the actor who plays Andre, he's just so perfect because he just has this sad look on his face the entire time.
Yeah.
And it's like even when his wife leaves him and he has the whole apartment to himself and he feels happy for a moment, he goes back to being sad. And I'm like, there's nothing in his life that makes him happy. His daughter doesn't make him very happy. His mistress doesn't make him very happy. His wife doesn't make him very happy. I kind of get the feeling he doesn't really want Bill around, but Bill kind of just imposes himself. And then Vasily, I guess for whatever reason, he's kind of like Kramer. He just bursts in whenever he wants, and it just takes over the place. Do you know what this movie kind of reminds me of the myth of Sisyphus? The guy who pushes the rock up the hill, but then the rock comes down and he has to go back and keep doing it again.
Oh yeah,
that's what it reminds me of, because he keeps pushing. He keeps trying to like. He keeps trying to like finish something, trying to like complete something, trying to get closure in his life, but he allows these distractions and he loses track, and then he has to go back and start from all over again.
Yeah.
Because you kind of get the feeling also that this is probably not the first time this has happened too. He's probably had like a big, punch up with his wife previously, and his daughter probably, threatened to leave at some point too. Because you remember she mentioned, or he mentioned to Allah that he really doesn't like her husband. He says he's a funny guy, quote unquote. So it just seems like no matter what he does, I kind of get the feeling he doesn't allow himself to be happy. Like there's nothing in his life that gives him joy. What do you think?
I agree 100%. Yeah, he can't say no to anyone. He's a people pleaser. He's dishonest with everyone, and therefore he's dishonest with himself.
Yeah.
He can't face the truth that he's basically spending his life trying to please other people, but they all are frustrated by him because he's not living his true self, right? He's just indecisive, he's full of weaknesses, and yeah.
I mean, it's a really, really funny movie, but it also requires a lot of thought too. And